right, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Sneaky Keys. This is my spiritual successor to Hidden Gems, where I'm just covering some books that may be worth a bit more than you might actually expect. So when you're out there digging, these are some offbeat titles that you may not be looking for that, like I said, could get you a nice return if you find them cheap enough. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Feel free to make suggestions of books that nobody's looking at that you think people should be paying attention to. And while you're at it, make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's selection of books, just hang on for a second and I'll be right back with them. All right, so for this week, I've got a couple of categories that I want to cover, and the first one being some second prints related to Amazing Spider-Man's Grim Hunt run. Yes, Craven has had some great storylines in Amazing Spider-Man and other Spider-Man titles throughout the years, and maybe his movie that came out last year or so wasn't all that great, but as a character, there are still some books that do pretty well if you can go find them out there. And no, this is not Craven's Last Hunt. This is Grim Hunt, and more specifically, the second prints that go with this title. So while the first prints are all right and the storyline is good, the second prints are a little tougher to find, starting off with Part 1 in issue 634. This has I believe this has a wraparound cover, but this one being one on the lower end side of things, this only sells for about $10, but still, $10 for just a second print ain't too bad if you could find this cheap enough. So keep an eye out for that. Average listings are kind of in that same range. You can find some cheaper ones on the $6 side, and they go up to like $10. Not too expensive, but still not too bad for a book like this if you can find it in like a dollar bin or a cheap box or cheap bin, something like that. It's just something to keep in mind, and it does better if you can find it as a set. Now, that's the first one in this title, in this series that I want to point out. And yes, we are going to go on to the next issue in the next part. And this one has a bit of a different cover, and it kind of stands out a little bit. This has, all right, so a pretty cool cover here with Craven front and center on this issue 635, like I said. And this one does better than the last one, as you can see here, with prices being more on the $20 side. $20 on average is a little bit better than that last book, and one you want to keep an eye out for, while listings even look for a bit more, as they start at about $20 and they could go up to as high as $35. Granted, there may be some outliers even above and beyond or even below what I list here. I'm going for the ballpark average overall as far as listings and sales go, just to kind of give you a general idea, because, you know, timing is everything and things can change in a few months, and who knows what else is on the market. You may be the only game in town, or it could be flooded. Again, it's all on the timing. This is just some broad strokes information on some books that, like I said, could do better than you might expect, because I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who didn't know that this second print for issue 635 could go and ask for as much as $20 to $35. And this could be a book you find for, you know, $3 or $4 in a box somewhere. With that said, that is our second book in the run, the second part of the Grim Hunt storyline. So let's move it on to the third issue in the storyline with issue 636, which also has a second print cover showing, you know, Spidey pretty much nailed up on the wall like a trophy. One would expect this one to do a bit better, but this one does more like the first issue, where it's only about $10. So average sales about $10 on this one, with listings still in that same kind of range, looking for 5 to 15. So 5 on the low end, 15 on the higher end. Yes, outliers on both sides, really, but that's what we're talking about here with issue 3. Why the inconsistency here? I'm not sure. But I will note that if you can find these first 3 together, you can do well and get $35 for them. So if you can find these 3 parts, that's not too bad. Even though that's not the entire set, there is one more part. And why did I separate that from that group? Well, it's because sometimes people will go and separate that last piece, because the last piece does the best of all. And this is the standout of the group. And this is issue 637, the second print. You got a black suit Spidey. He's going in for the kill against Craven. Great cover here. Like I said, fun storyline. This one, this second print right here, average sales goes for $30 to $40. So this is a good one to keep an eye out for, because you can maybe find this for cheap and do well on a little bit of a return if you decide to sell it. So 30 to 40 on average sales, while listings for this particular book right now are looking for $100 to $200. Yeah, big asks on this one. Big asks on this one. And it's, like I said, it's one you want to keep an eye out for. And If you're kind of curious about graded wise, well, this particular one in 9.8 is about $300 plus. So you can see this one listed out there and could sell for around $300, maybe even a little bit more. So this is definitely the standout of this group and why I wanted to bring up this Grim Hunt storyline. But realistically, all of them are worth your time if you find them at the right price. So that's also a thing I want to remind you for. So while you may be looking for this one, don't skimp out on the other ones if they're cheap enough. Now, with that said, and these being the second prints, I don't want to leave it just there because that was the final issue in the run. And I just want to remind you of another one to keep an eye out for when you're out there digging or out there hunting, that even though I'm pointing out the second prints for this run, this particular issue does pretty well even in the first print, and that is that final part, issue 637. So if you can find the cover A of issue 637, this one also can go anywhere from $5 to $25 as far as average sales go. Condition, sensitive, obviously. Lower end or beat up book might get you a little bit less. Higher end will get you a higher price. But by and large, this one could sell from anywhere from $5 to $25, which is a pretty wide range. And the same things goes for the listings on this one, as it could be listed for as cheap as $5 or as high as $30. It's a wide range, folks, but it is definitely one to keep an eye on and one to watch because this is the first print, and it is the same storyline and the same events that take place in that second print book that goes for so much more. Now, with that all said, I want to remind any of you out there who need supplies, use my code RENNA10 over at BCW to save yourself 10% off your entire order. You can get your bags, your boards, your long boxes, your short boxes, your CGC boxes, your top loaders, pages for your cards, basically anything to keep your comics or collectibles safe. You can probably find a product over at BCW, and if you got to get those supplies, you might as well save some money while you do it by using my code RENNA10 for 10% off your entire order. You save yourself some money, you help out the channel, you really got nothing to lose if you got to get the supplies anyway. Now, with that said, let's move on into our next room and our next group of books and take a look at a long-forgotten title. Any of you guys remember Skyrunner? Even I don't remember this one very well, but the reason why I do remember this a little bit is because of one of my all-time favorite artists, Jim Lee, providing some of the covers here on the incentives. So, here's Skyrunner #1 from Wildstorm. Much like many of the titles that ran through his imprint, Jim Lee did provide a 1 in 10 incentive variant here for issue 1. So it's kind of a fantasy sort of vibe. You can see like elves and whatnot, a little bit of futuristic mixing in. But with that said, this issue, I couldn't actually find any sales recently to speak of for this first issue of Skyrunner here. But even if we could find some recent sales, they probably wouldn't go for very much because realistically, this one is only about $10 that people are looking for it. You might even find some cheaper copies, maybe a couple of bucks more, but by and large, they're not seeking a lot for this book, which is kind of surprising because it is not the easiest thing to track down. It's not like this was a very popular book with a heavy print run. It's still the 1 in 10 on this odd imprint Wildstorm book that Jim Lee provided an incentive cover on it. So just keep that in mind that he did do the 1 in 10 incentive, not only on this issue, but the first couple of issues. So while we're at it, let's take a look at the other issues in this run because I think I covered these maybe even on Chasing Ghosts not too long ago because these ones aren't very easy to find and they can go for a bit more. So while issue 1, by and large, the prices are pretty low, are pretty tame. Let's take a look at issue 2 next. So here we go. This is the issue 2, 1 in 10 that Jim Lee provided the cover for. A little bit different, girl in the shadow of a barbarian or some sort. Again, a book that's not sold recently. No one is looking for this. No one is shopping for this one right now online. So you keep that in mind. So without recent sales, one has to wonder whether this $20 to $70 asking price is justified or not. I don't know. That does seem like a lot for a 1 in 10 where the issue 1 is only $10 out there and now issue 2 is $20 to $70. That said, 9.8s are like $300. So keep that in mind as well, that is the upside. If you can find yourself a really nice copy out there, you could potentially have a couple $100 book if you get that thing graded and get that, sought after 9.8 because there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of them. So keep that in mind with issue 2 of Skyrunner, but that's not the last one he did. Jim Lee did one more on the run, one more on the series. So let's take a look now at issue 3. So again, issue 3, 1 in 10, Jim Lee cover. This one comes off more as like a sketch design cover. As you might guess, no sales. No sales. Tough to find book. Not only that, there's none listed right now. So again, this kind of falls in that borderline, could this be in Chasing Ghosts kind of situation? Because this is not an easy book to track down. And without a market telling us what the price could go for, who knows what this could go for? But much like issue 2, the 9.8 is the $300 book. So big prices on the graded versions of these 1 in 10s. But as you can see here, you might be able to sneak these for pretty cheap. Who knows? And again, this could be a tough market, a tough sell to anybody because it's not a big in-demand book, but it is a unique collectible. And like I said, if you want to go and get that Jim Lee series of covers like I do, I like to collect Jim Lee, this could be one of those tougher end or tougher finds for these 3 1 in 10s. Now, with Skyrunner, the series itself only ran like 6 issues, I think, and only these first 3 had 1 in 10s. But there were some other variants mixed in that do all right. So popular artists can sometimes get you a nice return too. So with that said, let's take a look at issue 2 of the series again. But this is the B cover because it is done by J. Scott Campbell. You know Campbell's got his fans, and you can do all right sometimes with his covers. Not an incentive, so this is just out there. Dig in a box. Who knows what you might get? Because right now, I've got no recent sales to give you right now on this book. But asking prices can go anywhere from $5 to $25. So once again, wide range on this thing. Not a lot of demand right now because, again, it's kind of a forgotten title. But a pretty cool cover by Campbell and one of those oddball books. And again, if you are an artist cover collector, maybe one that you might need, one you don't have, one you want to keep an eye out for when you're out there digging. So keep an eye out for that issue 2 Campbell cover. And finally, I'll give you one more to watch as part of this series. Another one of those B covers like the Campbell. This time out, it's on issue 4. This is an Art Adams, which, again, it's a fun cover. I like it. This main character here, again, being spotlighted. But Art Adams, also another artist that a lot of people like to collect. No recent sales, once again, on this book. As you can see, nobody's buying Skyrunner. But listings, just like the Campbell, it's like $5 to $20. Wide range. Again, condition could play a part in that price. Also, demand. So it's just one of those oddball things for you to keep an eye out for when you're out there digging. Now, with that said, before we get to our final group of books, I want to remind any of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot yet, use my link down below to sign up and get yourselves a free $15 on your first purchase. That's $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. While I'll be making my way back to the format and back onto Whatnot to do a sale probably sometime in the next month or so, as I believe those Fantastic Four packs will be coming out soon, and I will have a few of those for sale. I will sell some other things along with that. Just keep that in mind. So you can go sign up now and save your $15 to spend with me, or go spend it with anybody else you like. No strings attached. Just use the code, try out the app. It's a lot of fun. Live auctions, there's buy it nows, etc. Get yourselves that free $15 if you haven't gotten them already. So with that all said, let's stick with Jim Lee for a minute here, because I've got some oddball Jim Lee covers that I want to talk about. So this is going to be subsection artist retrospective here on Jim Lee. No, we're not going back and talking about his older first. I thought about doing that. We could talk about his first Marvel and maybe talk about that samurai book. But instead, I figured I'm just going to pick some oddball random stuff. Because when you're out there digging in a box, sometimes these are the oddball random things you come across. So with that said, first up, we're going with Ruby. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I believe this is a gaming thing, RWBY. But Ruby #1, he just did a variant cover for this series. It's just like a B cover, basically. But it is Jim Lee. It is from DC. And this thing, it's like $10. I know, doesn't seem like a lot. It was a $5 cover. It gets $10 now. But this is the type of book you might find in a dollar box because not a lot of people are buying this book. And it's just some back issue book that they just throw out there for cheap. And maybe you find the Jim Lee cover and you get it. It can get $10. Asking prices, though, 10 to 20. So once again, if it's cheap enough, you find it for cover even, maybe it's worth your effort to pick it up to try and get 10 to 20 bucks for this thing. And if you want to send it off to get graded, 9.8s could get you a $1.50. So $150 and a 9.8 for this particular Jim Lee cover, not too bad. So keep that in mind as well if you like getting your books graded. Now, that's the first one as an example. Next book, we're going to go with a little bit more nostalgia. Still not that old. This is still in the 2000s. We're going with Thundercats number 2 of 5. And this is a Jim Lee cover, just Jim Lee doing Thundercats. I believe Ed McGuinness started it off, and I think there's a Campbell cover in here as well in this run from Wildstorm. But Jim Lee giving us Lion-O here on issue 2 is a fun book that sells for about $10 to $15 on average if you can find this out there. So 10 to 15 bucks ain't too bad if you can find this cheap enough. Meanwhile, listings for this right now are more like $10 to $30. So 10 to 30 bucks they're asking, 10 to 20 or whatever is what it sells for. It's still pretty good if you can find it cheap enough. So one of those fun books for you to go look for. Plus, if you like Jim Lee, you like Thundercats, this is probably a book you want for yourself anyway. Now, this, like the other book, is $150 9.8. So if you need to go and get yourself a 9.8 or want to get yourself a graded, you can, and it'll get you 150 bucks. So keep that in mind as well. But moving on from here, we're going to go from this Thundercats book to a movie property. That's right, movie adaptation of sorts, or kind of tied in, Django Unchained from Vertigo. That's right, Oscar nominee for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. This was an excellent movie, if you haven't seen it. I enjoy it quite a bit, and this is a Jim Lee cover here on the second print. So kind of tying in with the second print angle from the start of the show, the Jim Lee angle from earlier, this one's bringing it all together here with Django Unchained, the black and white second print. This cover was originally, I think, on the 1 in 25 for the regular number 1, so getting the same art, but the sketch version on the second print is a probably cheaper option, but not too cheap because this thing still gets 15 to 20 bucks on average, as you can see here, which ain't too bad. So just the second print, 15 to 20 bucks average sales, while listings are looking more for $15 to $25 right now. It's just something to keep in mind. Keep an eye out for that second print for Django Unchained, and you might also want to be mindful of the third print because it is the same cover, but now with more of a sepia-toned kind of throwback here, Old West wanted poster kind of vibe, which I also dig. This is another book that is also right in that same kind of range at 10 to 20 bucks. So keep that out there. And it could be even tougher because not only is it a third print, I couldn't even find any listed right now. But I'm not telling you to buy these things online. These are the type of things I'm telling you, go dig in your shops, dig at your half-price books, dig at flea markets, wherever you do your cheap comic hunting. Who knows what you might come across? And that's why I'm telling you about oddball titles like this that, again, could get you some more bucks than you might expect. So with that, those are 4, I think, interesting Jim Lee covers for you to keep an eye out for. Yes, 2 of them are basically the same. So for that reason, I'll give you one more for the road just before we wrap up here to keep an eye out for. And this Jim Lee cover is one that, I only found out about a couple of years ago and did have to go and grab one for myself as soon as I could. And that is EverQuest, the Ruins of Kunark, if you will. But yes, EverQuest, Jim Lee cover. How could you say no? I needed this. 10 to 10 to 30 bucks this actually sells for currently. So this was much higher not that long ago when I think it was a couple of years ago. There was some EverQuest talk, I think, but it was a bit higher, but 10 to 30 still ain't bad for average sales, while listings a little bit wider, still a minimum of 10, but goes up to 50. Maybe even more on some of the asking prices for this book. So once again, something to keep an eye on. Timing will be everything if you find this book, if you can sell this book. So keep that in mind as well. Nothing is guaranteed, but just something you might want to keep in mind in case you can find this book out there for cheap enough. You might want to consider it because if you decide to get it graded, you might be able to get yourself a 9.8 for 285 bucks. So think of that too. 9.8's 285 bucks for this book if you can go and get one graded and hit that magical 9.8 price. So with that all said, that's all I got for you this week. Hopefully you enjoyed that set of books. I got a few more of these planned out to come in the months ahead, so hopefully you're on board for that. I like doing shows like this and talking about oddball books and topics like this, so hopefully you enjoy this too. Now, with that all said, I got plenty more content coming your way, so stick around. Make sure you tell your friends so we can keep growing the channel, and I'll see you all later with some more content. All right?